I'm the coordinator of secondary education, and I want to review very briefly what next year, and at the very least, part of the following year will look like for all of you. We hope, I hope, that almost everything I'm going to say is something you already know. Because if you don't know it, or didn't realize it, then we haven't done our job. We call our particular program teacher-to-teacher program. And all of you are more or less in the teacher-to-teacher program already. It refers specifically to the fact that we have an extended, or to use another term, a post-bac licensure program. Everyone in here will graduate with a degree from Furman in 4 years. That would be next spring. However, you do not at that time have teacher licensure. Now, I don't mean to make light of this or to be sardonic or snarky, but there will be someone who will make an appointment to come see me or one of my colleagues next year, who will look quite distraught and who will say, because this happens every year, I didn't know we didn't get certified in 4 years. And if the person comes to me and says that, I will say, but on February 26th of last year, I told you, all right? This should not be news to anyone in here. We are very, very proud of this program. It has generated national praise for us. Professor Cantrell was right there at the very beginning. She has been with the program ever since. What it provides you with is the alternative to do a really great student teaching internship combined with an induction year. But let me back up just a moment. Each one of you should have a graphic organizer. It's either the blue, the orange, or this is alien color to me. I don't know what this green color. But that outlines what your next year and a half to 2+ years will look like. So I'm going to walk you through that. I'm not going to read this to you. I'm going to walk you through the main components so it will be clear to you. We have already mentioned, and we'll talk a bit more about this later this afternoon, we've already mentioned something called early experience. That provides each one of you with the opportunity to see what the beginning of a school year looks like. That is critically important in the life cycle of any particular school year. It is critical that as a beginning teacher you have some experience, some knowledge, and some comfort with not only preparing your classroom prior to the student's arrival, but during those first couple of weeks after they arrive. During most student teaching internships, in other words, at other schools, at other programs, you don't get this opportunity. You see what it's like in the middle and at the end of the year, but you don't see what it's like at the beginning of the year. So early experience gives you full time for several days, in fact, typically a couple of weeks, time on campus in a placement school to see what that is like. To interact with your cooperating teacher, and possibly, though not required, possibly even participate in classroom instruction. If you're an elementary candidate, that would involve possibly duties throughout the course of the day. If you're a secondary candidate, it might involve teaching a discrete or separate lesson or two, maybe just for 15 or 20 minutes. You will then have fall classes here at Furman when you will finish up any and all of your pre-senior block education courses and any other courses you need to graduate. During that time, you will also continue to make visits to your placement school that will be arranged between you and your cooperating teacher as often as you can and is desirable. Now, we understand with Furman's particular schedule of classes, as well as the location of some of the placement schools, that some of you may only be able to get out an hour or two every couple of weeks, or an hour a week, or something like that. That's fine. But what we do not want you to do is to not go out at all, to use a double negative, and to simply show back up in your placement school in January. This is an opportunity for you to remain a part of the culture, the environment, and the student population of the classes or class you're going to be involved in. This is especially true for elementary candidates. It's also true for secondary candidates, although the students secondary candidates have during the second half of the year is sometimes different. So let's talk about the second half of your senior year. I feel the need, I almost feel like the need to do a choral response, all right? I'm going to tell you something. The field experience you're going to do that is part of your senior block is called the senior practicum. It is not student teaching, okay? I want you to say no when I ask you this question, all right? Is the senior practicum student teaching? No. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, I will explain to you why we had that moment brought to you by the letter L and the number 4 or some other excursus into the Sesame Street. Right? The reason for that is because we do not want you leaving Furman or telling school administrators or cooperating teachers that you have completed student teaching, because that suggests that you are qualified for a credential you're not qualified for yet. You have done field experiences as part of EDU 111, 120, and for most of you, you've done that or are doing it for 221. The senior practicum is simply field experiences for 3 education courses that are coordinated and integrated together. Now, does it look and feel a good deal like student teaching? Yes, it does. I agree. You're not going to get an argument there. But it is not student teaching. So the question is, why do we have such an extended field experience, which we call a practicum, during the last half of your senior year? I'm glad you asked. Late in the afternoon, you don't have to laugh. It helps me, however. Later in the day. Okay, so what makes our program almost unique is that we provide our candidates who are qualified to do so to apply for induction year teaching positions after they graduate or contingent upon their graduating. Now, Furman is not in the employment business. Furman does not supply any of its teacher candidates with a job. What we do, though, is to encourage and help prepare you and help guide you, again, all things being equal and all other conditions met, to apply for first-year teaching positions in our partner schools in the neighboring school districts. If you are offered one of those positions, then you are the official teacher. You are what we call the teacher of record in a classroom. You get a salary and benefits for an entire year. You're contracted as the teacher for an entire year. And during that fall term, you are simultaneously completing your student teaching internship. It's one and the same thing. You will be under the supervision of a faculty member in teacher ed program, and you will be assigned a district mentor who will have several Furman induction year teachers, as it's primarily women, so I'll use the feminine pronoun, her responsibility. That mentoring piece is terribly important and terribly beneficial. We believe that is one reason that as long as we've been doing this program, our candidates have remained in teaching in the numbers they have remained in teaching. We are running between 85 and 90% of our graduates from this program who are still teaching. Those of you who were in my 111, and I see a couple of you, you'll recall, I won't point at you to test your memory, but you'll recall that nationally, almost half of all first-time teachers leave the profession within 5 years. So we're the difference between 50 and 90%. That, ladies and gentlemen, is huge. That is huge. That is something it's worth tweeting, twerping, burping, whatever you want to do about it.
Not twerking.
I don't know.
Not there.
Okay. Now, there are 6 hours of student teaching course credit that go along with that. What happens is that if you are hired as an induction year teacher, the districts are paying for that tuition. That's graduate tuition, which is 40% cheaper than the tuition you're paying as undergraduates. You also have the option of working toward a master's degree from the summer after you graduate through the end of that particular master's degree program. And most of our programs, not every single one, can be completed if you start the summer after you graduate. So for those of you in this room, that would be June of 2015, thank you. You would complete that program by early August 2016. Okay, and I typically teach the last course in the program, so that's why I know that. Now, let me take just a second. We're almost finished. Hang in there now. Some of you may not want to apply for induction year positions. There may be 1 or 2 of you who decide at the end of the senior practicum next year that you're really not confident enough, you don't feel that you're able at that point or in a couple of months to take over the job or to assume the job of a full-time teacher. We have 1 or 2 students in groups this large each year that we've had the program who decide that. There may be 1 or 2 of you who, for personal reasons, which are none of our business, but for personal reasons, wish to leave South Carolina once you get certified to teach. You want to teach somewhere else, or your life is calling you to do either teaching or something else somewhere else. For those people, we offer what we call a traditional, though you won't, that doesn't mean anything to you, but what is traditional for student teaching internships, which is in the fall, you will be placed in a cooperating teacher's classroom. You will gradually take over his or her teaching load and administrative duties. You will then gradually relinquish them at the end of the fall term. You will also get 6 hours of graduate course credit, but you will need to pay for those yourself. You will not get a salary or fringe benefits. I said it was traditional student teaching internship. I did one of those a long time ago. And then at the end of the fall term, if everything else, if you've met all of the other qualifications and criteria. You will receive our endorsement for teacher licensure, and you may then proceed with whatever the next stage in your own personal journey is that's going to take you outside of South Carolina, or again, for anyone who didn't think he or she was ready to become an induction year teacher, you might be staying in South Carolina, and now we would hope at that point you would feel confident to begin applying for jobs and becoming, as soon as possible, employed by a local school district. That is, I know, a lot of information, and you've had to, process it, at a time of the day when most of us are sort of turning our brains off. Are there any questions about what your Furman schedule, roughly speaking, is going to be between now and a couple of years from now? Any questions? Yes.
For the fall semester of our senior year,
Yes.
will we fulfill, like if we have methods classes to take that semester, will we fulfill those hours in that same classroom?
We make every effort to do that, yes. We also, however, want to make sure that all of you have a diversity of field placements while you're in our teacher ed program. And that's a diversity that ranges from type of school, type of student, type of cooperating teacher, but we do try to do that as much as we can, or else then your life can become really, you're living in your car, you don't have time to get back to your classes, so yes.
The only exception would be if, like, say somebody still has 330 left to take and they're in a fourth or fifth grade placement. And what Dr. Hecker would do is suggest, that you go to a kindergarten or first grade classroom at that same school. So at least you're in that setting, but you may not be in your exact classroom.
But you don't need to drive your car from one part of school to the other. Okay, yes.
I have a question. On the 5th year, after
Yes.
the fall,
Yes?
we take, over Christmas break, I guess, we take a test and get our certification. Or do you just automatically get that? I know I don't,
Okay.
I always hear teachers talking about taking tests.
Right, yeah, a lot of teachers know, right. Okay. When you finish the fall term, whether you're an induction year teacher or just doing a fall term only internship, by that point you should have taken every test you need to have taken. You should have been fingerprinted. You should have passed your final adept evaluation. If all your paperwork's in and everything is tied up, then at that point you really don't need to do anything else. Ms. Moore spends her hard-earned Christmas break making sure all of your credentials are together. We send those, she sends those to the State Department of Education, and the State Department of Education for South Carolina is the entity that issues the licensure. Okay? Not to sound jargony, we endorse you for licensure. The state of South Carolina is empowered to actually license you to take care of other people's children.
I just want to jump in because I know a lot of people have a lot of test anxiety. When you come back to campus in August, we're going to have another orientation. It's going to be called Early Experience Orientation. And you're going to have a packet and you're going to have information from me in there when to take your Praxis 2 exams and then when you're going to do your application for licensure and fingerprinting. So we prompt you at all those junctures, so don't panic, but you have to figure this all out yourself. You're going to get information from us at each of the transition points of when you're supposed to be getting some things done.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. That would be me.
You with the Furman shirt, which narrows it down not.
When do we get our placements for next year? That's what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, I can't steal the job.
For that 5th year, when do you start a
You know, you will, I think I know what you meant, actually not the 5th year, but next year,
Oh, yeah,
which would be the
that
4th
one.
year.
Mhm.
And, not, at the very earliest, not until after fall term.
Okay.
You know,
And really, they haven't started that this year yet either. They're really getting ready to start applications now.
yeah.